Well, so it's a good question. I mean, there's a couple different things. So I try to go actually very simply on certain issues. I think some people, when they provide advice and, they have very specific areas and they want to get, into all the details of a
Oh,
certain ISO code, and God bless them for doing that. But I think actually sometimes you have to start at the fundamentals. So this might seem like a very basic thing, but I often say, let's pull out a map together and start looking at the different supply chains around it. Because one of the challenges often, and I think businesses understandably are focused, for example, in the country that they have operations in. Say they have operations in Thailand, and they're like, what is the risk in Thailand? What is the security risk? What's the economic risk? What's the political risk? That's understandable. But understanding all of the pieces around Thailand, how all of this interconnects, is very, very important. So that's basically the starting point where I'll often start. And when we're talking about high level Indo-Pacific risks or China focused risks, and they deeply interconnect globally too. So I think that's another point that we've talked about today. Seems to make sense, and I think a lot of high level business individuals get. But just understanding how deep those connections are. So, for example, the fact that that NATO, the EU itself, have their own strategies on this, are taking their own policies that could impact businesses in the future. I think all of these things sometimes are a bit new to individuals when they're in these consultations. So those are a couple of the points that I will bring in. And the last thing, and again, I think this somewhat seems like a basic point, but I think it needs to be consistently hammered in, is that national security and geopolitics is not a luxury. I think that it often continues to be seen as a luxury. Maybe it seems a bit trendy and fatty, but the reality is it's bare bones security. So you think about when you have a physical office or residence or store, and you either have a security guard or you have cameras or you have something to kind of ensure the physical security of your premises. Understanding the geopolitical landscape, understanding these fundamental risks to your investments, I think is a core responsibility as a chief executive officer or those who are charged with running businesses. So that's another thing that we end up talking a bit about is, okay, how do we sort of get ourselves through the weeds and all of the sort of inside baseball on each individual issue, and then talk about the larger risk and how it precisely affects you, because not everyone will be equally affected by a contingency over Taiwan. Some of them might be more focused on export controls or critical minerals. So really sort of trying to narrow in a little bit on what impacts their business.